we're going to talk about the role and responsibility of prototyping. I have mixed feelings about this because I don't think it's just a UXers and researchers' responsibility, so we're going to see what you all think today. So I will need you to scan this lovely QR code. It's also where you're going to be able to give feedback at the end of the session, and we do appreciate your feedback, so please take some time for that, as we all love to grow. So we're going to see how this is going to change. All right, let's see. So we got always, most of the time. Ooh, we have a lot of people that prototype here. I love this. Some people sometimes, some people never. Most of the time has gone up. We don't even have percentages anymore. All right. OK, people keep voting. So most people say that they prototype always and most of the time. Is there anyone who would like to answer to always? So if you prototype always, what do you actually do? And what is your role? So are you a UX researcher? Are you a UX designer? Are you a content writer? Anyone that said always? And don't feel pressured. We're in a safe space here. No one? Hand raised? Come on, it's like 22% of you over there. Anyone? Hand raised like high. OK, gentlemen in the front, please introduce yourself and tell us.
So, yeah, my name is Rafael. Yeah, I always prototype, like even sometimes the lo-fi designs to pitch it to the developers.
OK.
So we have an idea, and then from my perspective, prototype's the time for us to discuss with them the feasibility of it.
OK.
We can have an amazing idea that will cost them a year of development. So
yep, I like that. So you quantify how much effort it would be to implement that. Do you talk to product at all?
Yes.
So you talk to them about like the importance to customer, I'm guessing, and that like if this is really needed, like what's the value and how much do we need it?
Yeah, absolutely.
OK, awesome.
Yeah.
Anyone else who said most of the time? Why most of the time? What do you do? You need to raise your hand high because I can't see because of the blinding lights in my face. There is someone. Someone? I can see Maria walking. OK, gentlemen, I will move to see you. Hello.
All right. Sometimes you're just doing smaller things that you can just roll out. It's not major improvements. You just know what to just do it sometimes. And most of the time, you can just roll back if it doesn't work. So, of course, if you're doing major things, you have to validate it. But sometimes you can just test it. If it takes 2 days to do it, just do it. And if you have enough data, you should see if it's succeeding or not.
Yeah, awesome. And what is your role, if I may ask? What do you do?
Product manager.
Product manager. Awesome. Love that. All right. So has anyone ever been annoyed by something like this? I hate it with a passion. And do you think that these people prototyped and tried it out with people before they rolled out this? A raise of hands if you think they've prototyped. No. A raise of hands if you think they just didn't care and thought it was a good idea. Awesome. OK. So why do we need prototypes? Because we don't want to annoy people, and we want to make sure that we're building the right thing for them. So we're going to go briefly. Is anyone here that doesn't know what a prototype is? I wanted to level set, but I'm just like making sure that we're all in the same. OK, no hands raised. Most people are familiar. So our friends at UXPin say that, you know, like a prototype is an early version or a model for you to be able to actually kind of like test before you roll it out to the masses, like the examples of those doors, which obviously they didn't really care. They were like, well, we're not going to fix it now. We've reduced all of the doors with those handles, kind of late. And I think like it's important to understand that a lot of the teams might consider that is the responsibility of the researcher or the designer to prototype, but actually it's more than that. You can actually use it regardless of what role you have. So whether you're a product manager, whether you're a designer, whether you're a developer, you can use it to get early feedback and kind of like iterate on what you're already doing. So what do you think is the primary purpose of the prototypes? And I am warning you, I will ask some of you to share why you picked what you picked. So do you think it's about ideas? Do you think it's about handing off to developers to see if it's feasible? Do you think it's about usability, accessibility, aligning your stakeholders around something so they can actually kind of like visualize what you're trying to build? Okay, so a lot of people said all of the above. I'm going to challenge you on that, because if you said all of the above, how many of you actually do it for all of the above reasons? So if you said for all of that, is there one of you that has done prototypes for those 4 different things? And like, I'm not talking about utopia. I'm not talking about what should prototypes be for. What do we actually use them for? So we have usability as a big, big item. The percentages have disappeared again, which is awesome. So I need 2 volunteers for all of the above and for usability. So like, why would you defend that this is what prototypes are for? And there is no right or wrong answer. There is just your answer and how you see prototyping. We have a gentleman in the middle over there. Where is our, oh my God, can I throw it? I mean, if I don't throw it to you, please make sure that whoever's next to you actually tries to catch it and you don't just get hit. Thank you, almost there. Wait a second. I think it's maybe on now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, my name's Terrence. I'm a product manager. So I think context is always dependent. I'm working with a pre-launch startup right now. And so we definitely use prototypes for all of the above, because we have to use it to visually evaluate some ideas, and do some usability testing before we can put into development, because it's costly. And then aligning with co-founders, and then the developers need something visual to work off of, so we just translate that directly off the hi-fis.
Cool. I like that. So there are some differences in how people use prototypes depending on where they're at, whether they're a startup, a scale-up, a founder-led enterprise, a big company like I'm talking about 50,000 employees plus. And there's also the other thing of, I was reading an article, I think yesterday, on how designers, even though they aren't really expected to code, with the new kind of like emergence of Gen AI and the ability of people to be able to code kind of like code prototypes using Gen AI as opposed to having to learn how to code, it might start to shift a bit more where you have like a working prototype created with code, which is typically the last kind of like fidelity level. So you'd have like paper prototypes, you'd have lo-fi, hi-fi, and then you'd have code prototypes. But because of the emergence of Gen AI and the ease with which you can now create code prototypes, it's actually a little bit of a change in perspective, where potentially in a year's time, designers might actually be expected to code in the sense of they might need to use a Gen AI bot to be able to create a code prototype as opposed to just doing kind of like Figma. So the answer kind of generically beyond it depends is you should use a prototype whenever you need to test customer and product assumptions. And that is whether you're testing a new information architecture for your knowledge base, whether you're designing a new feature, whether you're working on a new requirement as a developer and you want to get feedback from your team, whether you're a designer or a researcher and you're trying to inform what your teams are building, you should be using it to test stuff before it's too late and before you've already committed. So it's all well and good, but a lot of people will come and say, okay, but how do we make time? Or how do we include this in our development process? Because if we prototype everything, how are we actually going to be able to do anything else beyond prototyping? And that's why we want to ask you, what are the biggest challenges you face with prototyping? So for the people that answered, most of the time or never, why don't you do it? Why can't you do it? Who's preventing you, or what's preventing you from actually being able to do it? Okay, so we have, I hope someone's okay behind the stage. No time and resources, challenge finding participants, set stakeholder expectations too early. I do kind of like the stakeholder expectations. Would anyone like to talk about that? Okay, we're going back. Oh, look at that. It's in your row. Perfect timing. Thank you.
I answered the stakeholder expectation. I think when you are early on in the product development, you should be doing storytelling and more sketches, not prototypes, because you don't want to commit too much at that time.
Yeah.
And have a much more open viewpoint, so you can get the stakeholders and everyone in line that the goal, what you're trying to achieve, not exactly how to achieve it.
Yep. I like that. And how about the no time and resources? Would anyone like to share why no time or resources? And then I'm going to challenge you and ask, if you don't have time and resources now, then what do you do when it doesn't really work and you have to go back and fix it? How do you find time and resources then? I'm trying to see any hands raised. Any hands raised? I know it's a hard question, but you can, give me your perspective. We have the lady over there. You were smiling from the beginning, but you didn't want to raise your hand. Hello.
Yeah, I think for no time and resources, maybe it's more what the people who decides think about it, because they might want you to do other things, and then you have to kind of like challenges that, and then sometimes it's not so easy to do like small tests either. Like for us, we work in a big organization, and we have to kind of like find the right people, and this takes time. So if we could just test a person on the street, it wouldn't take that much time. But since we have to have the right participants, it takes much more resources than other times. Yeah.
And what is your role?
UX designer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
And do you have access to your end users or your customers? Do you is it that you're far removed from them, or do you have access if you did want to test?
Yeah,
or is there other
we
teams?
have resources in the project that we can kind of talk with, but they know the project so well that we don't really want to test on them because they can do anything because they know it.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is to test it on the people who doesn't know it, but then we have to go through many
teams to get to like the end.
Yeah, and then we have to plan, and then someone has to say that it's okay that we use the time to plan it. Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have any suggestions? Have you encountered that in your companies? Have you had to do some of that? Have you had to change hearts and minds to invest in time for prototyping? Does anyone have any insights? There's a gentleman in the back. You can throw. See how far it gets. Woo! Awesome.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I am a product manager also. The biggest challenge, we work in a large organization, very large organization. So the challenge was always the stakeholders, they almost never find any value in prototyping, for example. And we do lots of decision science kind of products. So mostly the stakeholders, the leadership, they say, oh, why do we need prototyping at all? So what happened is recently, one of the projects, when it came out, the outcome of the project, it didn't satisfy the requirements of the end users. And so that's when I could actually tell leadership the value I could show for the next project, the value of prototyping, because we started with the prototype itself. Mm-hmm. Even if it was a very low fidelity sketch, but we started with prototyping, and then we evolved, we made into high fidelity prototype and things like that. So, and the project, of course, went smoothly, and the customer expectation could be met.
Yes. So you had you went with their way of we don't have time, we don't have resources for prototyping. Okay, let's see what we get out. What's the outcome? And then after that, you were like, well, let's try it the other way now. Since we did this and we failed, let's see if this actually works. And then it did. So now you have kind of social proof to be able to say well, next time when we start a project, let's do it this way, because obviously it's a better outcome.
Yes, and actually they are the proponents now.
They come to you and they're like, so we should prototype this before we actually get to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right, so now we were actually talking about fidelity just now of your prototypes. what fidelity do you mostly start at? And I know the designers here will be like, well, Figma's my best friend. Does anyone here do like paper prototyping? Do people do low fidelity anymore? Or is like Figma's my best friend and like that's, you know, the vibe? Okay, we have low fidelity, high fidelity. All right. I would like 2 volunteers, one that picked low and one that picked high, to help us out with like why they start there and how this helps their prototyping and design process. Anyone for low? Anyone for low? I feel like an auction. Anyone for low? Oh, we have a person in the back over there. Where did it end up? Oh, you can throw it to the lady over there. Yes. Okay, microphone, getting there.
Hey.
Hello.
So low fidelity helps you literally just copy whatever's in your brain rather than just moving to high fidelity where you'll have to find the tools, the options to just put it on the screen. But in low fidelity, you can literally draw anything that's in your mind. It doesn't matter how it looks and doesn't matter like if it's good or not. It's on the paper, whatever is in your brain.
So it's like a starting point that you can iterate
Yes.
on, as opposed to like, hey, here's my final design. What do you think?
And
All right.
it's much better, like, yeah.
Oh, there's a gentleman next to you that has an opinion. Yes, please.
Hi.
Hello.
Of course, I'm an engineer, but work a lot with designers. So I think if you have an established design system, so that could also be a way that, you know, you can just start with the high fidelity. The components are already pre-made. Just put them together and bring out the idea to life with that as well. So having a design system also could just jump you up straight away to high fidelity.
So I have a question on that. So when you first start working with your counterparts, so like whether they're design or product, do you start with the high fidelity, so like you're basically like design system based like Figma designs, or do you have a previous stage where you go like low fidelity before you go and make the kind of like actual
I
high
would say most
fidelity?
of the time the high fidelity.
The high fidelity. Okay. There's no room for iteration. It's like we know what customers want. We're good on that. Cool. Anyone else that wants to converse about why it might not be great to do high fidelity first? We have 2 people in the front. Oh, we have someone coming with the microphone, so you don't have to catch it. The first row lady from Italy, and then the second row gentleman. She was here before. That's why I know she's from Italy. I didn't just randomly guess.
Yeah, so for example, I work in automotive company and I work in UX UI for displays of automotive. And for us is absolutely with high fidelity because we must be sure that also colors and style that you choose are really safe. I mean, people have now to have doubt about it. So for us, the low fidelity, but just for us, doesn't work. Because safety, I mean, if the product is really safe, you can say just when it's finished.
Yeah.
When you have the final look and feel that the customer will see. So that's why we go for
Yeah,
high
no,
fidelity.
that makes total sense. I totally understand that. And the gentleman at the back, are you low fidelity or high fidelity?
I'm high fidelity.
High fidelity.
So yeah, the only disadvantage is that because we have a design system and we just jump straight into high fidelity, is that we're actually only presenting ideas. But the initial problem when I started was that everyone thought we'd jump straight to the final solution, and it took a little while for the teams to get used to the fact that there wasn't any, it was slowing the process down for us by sort of sketching everything out when we could just go, right, we'll put it straight there and start to talk about it.
So you had to do some education and like change the culture of like, even though this looks like it's polished, it is not the final design. Like this is us just using the design system to quickly iterate, but like don't assume that like this is ready and like this is it. Like this is a starting point. Cool.
Yeah.
I like that. So you're educating your stakeholders to kind of like come on that same understanding.
Yeah, but when I hadn't had them educated, I actually turned projects around very, very quickly.
Look at that. It's like, you know, psychology, like reverse psychology of like, I'm not going to tell you this is not ready so you can agree and then we can move forward.
Yeah.
Cool. So how do you measure the success of a prototype? And this is our final question before we move on to our next session. What do you think is good for you? Sorry, I'm looking at my next speaker to make sure that they're there. Right? How do you measure? But see, the last gentleman, sorry, I didn't get your name. William. So William said that, when he didn't tell people that this is a prototype, they would deliver very fast. And I feel like that last bit there with rarely iterate. That's like, you have a high fidelity prototype, you show them, they're like, okay, yeah, this seems to meet the requirements, looks like what the customer wants. And then you rarely have to iterate because it's like, oh, well, this is kind of good. But do you iterate after you get feedback from your customer? And sometimes, I want to know personally, why and how did it go? When you did ship faster, did you have more negative feedback? And now that you spend more time iterating, has it improved?
So with the team I run, all the designers would actually see all the prototypes, and they knew how we worked, so they'd act as almost my user roughly user test. So if I'd gone off on a tangent and something seemed to be a bit too far out for the customers, they'd push back and say, actually, just tweak it here, and then I'd then go back to the product manager and say, we've made a little change, and they'd be happy.
Okay, so the customers haven't really, it's not a very different customer feedback, whether you shipped it faster or whether you take more time to review.
Yeah, someone would see it at some point. I'd get feedback from somewhere.
So you'd fix it before it got broken.
Pretty much.
Yeah, cool. So I want to ask someone, what are some of the metrics that you use for user feedback? How do you quantify that success? Because I see 65% of you have said user feedback. So okay, we use user feedback for the success. What do you do? Do you do I don't know, feature usage? Feature feedback on usage? Do you do actions, track events, track survey results? What kind of stuff? Oh, there's the gentleman in the back over there. We need to throw it now. William, you can do it. He stood up over there. Yes. Oh, overreach, but got there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm standing now. So we do in a couple of ways. Survey is one of them, feature surveys basically, and then also doing analytics of the usage of the features. So we do that, and then of course we have a way to do value analysis after the product is out. So we do it in these different ways.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Thank you. Anyone else on how they do it? It could also be internal team feedback, because I'm really curious about that. What do you mean by that? Is it that a prototype's successful if you do get people from your internal team saying, this is useful? Or how do you quantify that? Because again, 20% of you have said yes to that. So what kind of things do you do? I'm trying to see if there are any hands raised. Any hands raised? No hands? Okay.
There's a hand there.
Where? Sorry. I am blinded by the light. Yet again. The lady in the back. Oh, Fernanda. Hello. She is one of my colleagues in Dublin. So that's what I know her too.
Thank you. Hello.
Thank you.
Hi again.
Hello.
For internal feedback, what happens is everybody already worked on similar projects. They already got users' responses and feedbacks regarding previous prototypes and previous deliveries. So when you have a new feature or a feature that we are just adding to an existing product, they already kind of know where to go because we already had previous feedback. So when everybody engage on the team and say, okay, this is the right direction, we have everything we need here, and we're pretty sure that it's going to be a successful prototype as soon as we implement it, then I feel like it's a prototype that is actually successful because the whole team already had previous experiences with that.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. All right. And how many times do you iterate? And again, maybe some of you don't iterate. Maybe some of you iterate sometimes. But I'm curious to hear, how many times you have to go back to your prototype design and kind of go through it. All right. Some people do it once or twice, 3 times or 4 times seems to be the general kind of like range. 5 or more. Again, maybe it is about the complexity of the prototype as well. It might be on how broad you're going, the scope of it. It might mean that like you have to iterate more if it has many more components than if you're actually doing like one small change or one small feature prototype. Okay, some people rarely iterate, and again, maybe you just really listen to your customers and you get it right the first time, so you don't have to iterate that much. All right. And I promise I won't grill you anymore because we will be welcoming Petra shortly. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I hope you enjoyed the discussion on prototyping. Please don't forget to leave some feedback. And also, please don't forget to leave your headset on the seats so we can sanitize them if you're moving to the vision stage for the next session. If you're staying here, keep your headsets, and we'll get started in a couple of minutes. Cool. All right. Thank you so much.